Trauma. Everyone has it. No one talks about it. It seems easier to stay silent, ignore it, or stuff it than it does to honor it, learn from it, and finally heal. Trauma is debilitating, yet so often we suffer in silence. Trauma is not meant to be battled alone, and we are no longer going to suffer in silence. Together, we are creating a safe place to speak, to share our stories and grow our strength as we heal. Together, we are giving a voice to those who have been silenced, bringing darkness into light and letting God use our stories. Today, we find ourselves again. We relight our spark and let it light up the world. Stop SIS is a nonprofit organization dedicated to educating on issues of trauma and trafficking, as well as the amazing power of the healing journey. Welcome to Stop SIS. Big welcome back to Stop Suffering in Silence. My name is Denise Walsh, and I am here with co-host Rachel Timothy. Yay! I know, it's so awkward. We need to practice. Like, what do I do? And today is episode 19 of Stop SIS. You guys, the feedback that we've gotten over these past few months has been tremendous. I just got back from a Dream Life adventure, and everybody there has listened to the podcast, Rachel. They all have learned, whether they've experienced trauma themselves, they've felt normalized, they've felt understood, they've been encouraged on their own healing journey, or they are a community member who wants to keep their eyes open too. I just want to say thank you to Rachel for saying yes to putting your story kind of out there, wearing it on your sleeve, but then also talking about the healing side of trauma, because that's not a one-stop shop. Right? That's something that is a lifelong journey. And then thank you to you listeners for listening and sharing and just being a part of this conversation. And so we have decided that on episode 25, we are going to do a massive giveaway to give back to you, the listeners, as you're commenting and leaving reviews and sharing with your friends. So we need your help. We need to know what you would like. What do you want? Do you want Rachel's book? Do you want my book? Do you want gift cards to Amazon? Like, what would be something fun that we could give away in a way to give back? But today's conversation is, you can leave that in the show notes.
Ooh, what about like a phone call with us?
Ooh, a Zoom, like a 30-minute coaching session, or just to get to know your Zoom. Yeah, we could do that. Yeah, if you want something like that, post it. If you're on YouTube, the comments, absolutely share. If you're listening on the podcast, you can either go to the YouTube and leave a comment, or you can go to Facebook or Instagram and message the Stop SIS account or put it in the comments there. We'll see any of those places. But we're excited to connect with you. And
after you told me about your Dream Life adventure and these amazing people, I was like, I want to meet them.
Yes.
I want to get to know these people. They seem amazing.
Well, I already asked one to be a guest.
Okay, perfect.
One of the girls is wanting to travel, or not travel, but like speak to the healthcare industry. And so I said, all right, why don't you figure out your thoughts on what red flags the healthcare nurses, ER, things like that could notice, and let's talk about it. And so she's gonna put together some thoughts and let me know when she's ready.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, because she said, I had red flags and people didn't notice. And so we need to make sure this is known.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Good for her.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah. So today we have an idea to talk about something that I think impacts a lot of people coming into this season of time. We're going to talk a bit about holidays, I mean, I don't know, again, there's no right or wrong often in these conversations. It truly is just bringing up a conversation and wrestling through it personally, right? But holidays can stir up a lot of anxiety, sadness, disappointment, frustration. We often will wish our family were different than they are. And so we could have hopes of going to an event, and then they can be crashed and burned, and we leave upset because it's just not what we wish it were.
Yeah.
And so I guess let's just start with
Well, and I think another thing that you see skyrocket during the holiday season is coping skills. Eating
negative.
disorders get all out of whack. Alcoholism goes through the roof. Just not taking care of yourself and numbing yourself to handle some of these tough situations you're about to go into. We want to say that holidays are a great time of year, it's the best time of season or whatever. And for a lot of people, that's just not the case.
Yeah, you're right, because we have this increased stress and pressure, which then, in order to cope, people will automatically go to what feels good or what they're used to, which are these negative coping skills that then oftentimes we feel shame about. So then it just is this cycle.
It is. And we also find that a lot of our survivors, when they're put back around family, maybe back when their abuse was taking place, they go back to being that inner child, that 9-year-old, 10-year-old, and that is how they interact instead of being the adult self that they are.
Let's talk about this.
Let's.
So now, and I may have mentioned this before, but I think it's so interesting. When I was in the psychology world, we would always ask people when they started drinking or smoking and things like that, because we knew that would stunt their emotional growth. So if somebody started drinking at age 12, we knew they emotionally were at about an age 12 because they never learned how to handle these hard emotions through the teen years with healthy coping skills. They would immediately just drink. That was kind of what they did, or whatever the case may be. And so what we've learned too is that can happen with trauma. When the trauma starts, can often be where you may have some emotional stuntedness. So when a trigger happens, you go back to that emotional state of 9 or 12 or whatever, instead of responding like your adult self. And this doesn't mean you live as 9. And it doesn't mean you stay there all the time, but it can be one reason why, when you're put in this emotional or stressful situation, and maybe even if you go back to the same home, or all of those types of triggers could emotionally put you back into that emotional state.
Yeah. Part of me wonders, is it the inner child feeling like they know how to stay safe emotionally, so just let me take care of this? Or, is it just your own coping skill of when you're backed into a corner, you just automatically go back? I don't know.
Yeah. So there's a couple things that happen in this season. Number one, people get to decide, am I gonna go? And then they get to decide, how do I be when I go? So maybe we should talk about pros and cons of attending and not attending, or finding alternate family options, or just wrestle with it within that question.
Yeah. So I was reading just a little bit ago about the power of authenticity. And I almost feel like the answer to your question right there is, you go if you can be authentically you. I mean, what do you think? If you can, because when you have to go and fake who you are, it's going to take you a long time to recover from it. At least it does me. If I have to fake it around somebody like how I used to, and I don't want to say have to, but I do, in order to stay safe from either an emotional argument or feeling like I am degraded in any way, I will fit in. I will say the right things. I will not rock the boat. But then when I go home, I beat myself up over it. I have shame of, I went right back to my old self. I, fueled the fire in a sense from what I had been standing up to for so long. And it derails me.
Mm, yeah. Well, I guess let's talk about why somebody might not want to go.
Okay.
So we are thinking, and comes up within our groups, especially when the abuse was familial, when it was an uncle or a brother or a family member, or when the abuse wasn't believed. So somebody does come forward, and now all of a sudden the family is like against the survivor or saying, well, it's not true, or that kind of thing. So those are the two top situations that come to my mind. Then when we're working with survivors we've seen, are there any others why somebody wouldn't go?
Well, I mean, another reason I could think of is if your family has similar personalities or tendencies like that maybe will trigger your coping skill. Maybe they're alcoholics or they're whatever, like a coping skill that would derail you because it's been something you've struggled with in the past.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, and I know people who've chosen to stay away from family situations because they know that that's all they do is drink there, and so it wasn't a
Yeah,
good spot for them to be in.
yeah.
And I think that is really a question: is going into the situation helping you on your healing journey, or is it hurting your healing journey? And is it going to take you days to recover? And can you be your authentic self there? So
Yeah.
let's define authenticity, because I think this this is interesting to me. And so it says, when I Google it, it says that they describe authenticity as owning your own feelings and being accountable, understanding the impact of our actions on others, and being honest about what we need versus what we want. So real, genuine, true, accurate, really like radically honest.
Hmm.
So does being authentic in these situations mean that an argument is going to start?
It shouldn't. I mean, it doesn't have to. Um, I guess it just depends on who you're dealing with. Like sometimes you're going back to where maybe somebody is narcissistic. And if you really are your authentic self, it will cause an explosion.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's the question. Can you be
Yeah,
authentic without it causing an explosion?
right.
And if you feel like you have to hide or pretend, then that might not be the best place. Now, I can tell you, I go to a lot of family gatherings where we have differing opinions, and I get to choose whether I engage in this discussion or I lovingly ignore you.
Yes.
If you have an opinion that I do not subscribe to. But
Well,
go
and
ahead.
I think that's the adult self in you functioning. Like you're not out there to change them, but you're also not going to have to change yourself to fit in.
Right. Because I think sometimes they always say don't talk about what politics and religion at family
Yes,
events, because
yes.
that's when the heated arguments happen. And so there's certainly times where you say this is just not the time or the place
Mhm.
to bring this up or to have this hard discussion. So could there be anything that people could do before an event if they feel like a good hard talk is necessary?
Well, I probably doing the radical honesty long before the holidays even start.
Yeah. Yeah. And that could be, I actually just interviewed a friend who wrote a book, and she said one of the barriers to getting it out into the world was she was afraid that her mom would be mad at her because
Mm,
she just, told stories about her childhood, but if everybody's childhood impacts their adulthood and that kind of thing. And finally, she just went and asked her.
yeah.
And she said, here's my book, read it, tell me what you think. Is there anything you want me to take out? And her mom, who's 86 years old, was like, whatever, it's fine.
No.
But I think we can make this big anxiety. It can feel, like there's this big elephant in the room, when bringing it up or talking about it can actually clear the air and make it a bit easier for everybody.
Yeah. I think it's hard for not all trauma survivors, I think everybody's obviously still has different personalities, but a lot of trauma survivors have been silenced for so long. And that's how they feel going back. They feel like they're going to have to be silenced again. And they don't really have the words in the moment to be quick. And it's going to take them days to process all that just happened. And it just puts them in a more vulnerable situation, I guess.
So when would be what could somebody do if they were to say, you know what, it's not good for my mental state, it's not good for my healing journey to put myself in this situation again? What are their options for saying no and choosing something different?
Yes, what are their options?
Okay. So here's what you get to do. And again, this, I'm sure there's others that I'm not going to think of immediately, but you can put them in the show notes. If you've had to say no gracefully, you could just say, you know what, it's not going to work out for me this year. Or we've made other plans.
But you need to be authentic with it too.
Yeah. So I mean, that's when you have this if you need to have the hard conversation, then that's a different story. But what if you're just saying, I'm not going to come? I'm not going to come. And if you want to say why, you certainly can, especially since it's beforehand. That could give you the space to have the tricky conversation of, I'm not going to come because I don't want to have to pretend all night.
Yeah. Yep, that's not Christmas for me type thing,
Yeah.
That's miserable.
What you'll notice is I said I didn't say I'm not coming because you all suck. Which may be true, but or because you guys drink too much, or because you guys didn't believe you. When you say you in any sort of conversation, it brings up defensiveness. And so if I'm going to set a boundary for me, it's about me. And that's where I would recommend communication to be, because if I'm going to say, as soon as I say you, they're going to be like, Rrr. They may still get upset, but at least,
especially if there's grandkids involved, yeah.
Yeah. It's not best for me to, or where I'm at, it's not best for me to attend. And so could you make alternative arrangements with different pieces of your family? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Or could you find church family to hang out with, or school friends, or other places where you feel like you can be more yourself?
So, and I think this is where a call of action is kind of placed before us as a church, as a community. There's going to be a lot of people during the holiday season that don't belong anywhere. They're kind of just left out to dry. And that is where we need to have our eyes opened and our hearts open to say, hey, my door's open. You can come on in. Let's do Christmas together.
Yeah. Can you read the Brené Brown thought about loneliness?
Well, okay. So yes, I was reading this before we got on, and it was talking about belonging and the power of belonging. And she said, if I get to be me, I belong. If I have to be like you, I fit in. Another thing she said was, belonging is being accepted for you. Fitting in is being accepted for being like everyone else. And so when you find your people, and they're not always blood related, it's whoever God has placed in your life. And sometimes it's different people for different seasons of your life. There were people that I was extremely close to in past seasons of my life. Now we're in a new place, new people. It's where you can be yourself, because otherwise you're not belonging. You are simply fitting in. You are like everybody else. But when you are true to who you are, this is me, this is what I believe, this is how I feel, I'm not pretending, then you have a sense of belonging. And without that, you can be in a crowd of people and feel completely alone.
Absolutely. Would you say that walking on eggshells is another red flag that this is not a safe place for you?
Yes, I would.
Okay. Now, I would recommend, and everybody's story is different, but I do think that having that hard conversation before the event gives your family the chance to clear any air, or
Mm-hmm.
to, maybe there's things that you can come to agreement on beforehand, so then you can feel more comfortable.
Yeah.
But I do
I
think,
think,
go ahead.
sorry, I think you can flip it too, though. I think there can be
Yeah.
a sense of responsibility that needs to be put on the trauma survivor. If you are going, don't make it to where other people have to walk on eggshells around you either.
Ooh.
Because oftentimes, people are afraid to say the wrong thing around a trauma survivor. They're afraid they're going to say something that stirs up emotion. And so they're just afraid to talk. So as much as you can, maybe put others at ease and say, hey, let's just be real. Let's be ourselves. You don't have to walk on eggshells with me. I'm okay. And be true to that.
Yeah. Yeah. I never thought about that before. How could a trauma survivor say, what it reminds me of is somebody is maybe worried about triggering them,
Mm-hmm.
because in the past they may have been easily triggered, and it
Right.
could be just something that you don't even realize you're doing, and all of a sudden they're all upset and that kind of thing. But if you're on the healing journey and you're continuing to gain strength, you are a different person now. And
Yes.
so you're walking into that same old environment, but you're a different person.
Mm-hmm. And that's
And
sometimes hard for people to wrap their heads around.
yeah, that's very interesting, because they might expect you to get mad
Mm-hmm.
about whatever old thing might have upset you in the past.
Right. And it's not very often that you come across somebody who is a brand new person. You know, my story in the beginning was hard to believe. It was intense and extreme. My healing story is hard to believe. It is intense and extreme. And both have just been on furthest side of the spectrum as you can imagine. And I'm sure from the outside looking in, it's difficult to wrap your head around. Maybe even wonder, is it true? Is this real? Can this really? I don't know. But when you have those people who have either ridden the waves with me from the get-go, they get it. They've been there. But those who have kind of popped in and out, oh, I'm sure it's confusing and they don't know what to say or what to do.
Oh, so this just brings up more questions for me, because I'm so fascinated about, so there's the part of the survivor who doesn't feel comfortable because they weren't believed. So the pain wasn't believed. And
Mm-hmm.
they're still in pain, and like either
Mm-hmm.
nobody cares. I mean, obviously, whatever the situation is, or they just dismiss it, or they say it's not true, or they say get
It's
over
too
it, or all the
much.
things. It's too much for the family or whoever it is to process with them. So they just
Mm-hmm.
put their head in the sand.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe they don't quite believe the progress yet.
Yeah.
So you come and you are stronger, and you're not living at 9 anymore.
Right.
You are an adult brain, and you have come a long way, and they might not quite believe that either.
Right. But see, that's fun because now I get to reintroduce myself. And I get to show them what all God has done. And probably until, I meet them face to face, it maybe won't feel real. I don't know. But this is what we had all prayed for. Um, but I do know that's it. One of the things that I have learned throughout this journey is it's hard to be a friend of a trauma survivor. You are on a roller coaster ride. You don't want to say the wrong thing. I had a friend at church recently that he knows my story. And every time I walked in the room, he would take 3 steps back. And I picked up on it like every time. And he would just kind of almost look scared. And finally, I looked at him one day and I said, you don't have to be scared around me. Like you don't have to feel that way. And he said, I am so worried I'm going to say the wrong thing. I'm going to somehow trigger you or just be insensitive to what you've been through. And I said, no, I'm okay. Like people say things all the time that are, off the wall, and it's okay. I'm okay. But I don't want people to feel like they have to walk on eggshells around me. I'm sure back in the day that was a thing, maybe, because I was in such a dark place. but put people at ease maybe and just share, hey, it's okay. I'm good.
Well, I think that that takes so much courage of you. And that's what we mean by like clearing the air.
You almost like, I saw him take a breath of, oh, okay.
Yeah.
First, he was embarrassed that I noticed. And then he was like, okay, well, I'm glad you said something because, yes, I am concerned. I don't want to hurt you.
And then you can have a real conversation about it
Yes.
because I'm sure whatever he was thinking was blown up, right? And you're thinking, what did I do wrong? Why?
Right. Right.
Right. Okay. So you've got a family situation. You're deciding if you're going to go. If there's a tricky conversation that needs to happen beforehand, absolutely do your best to do that. What are some things, or you can decide not to go, right? If this is not a safe place, then make other arrangements if possible. Find more community. I mean, again, this is an opportunity for all of us to open our homes to those who might not have options. But what can we do to gain strength if we do decide to go? And again, I'm expect like when I think of going, I think the perpetrator is not in the room.
Oh, agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed.
I just don't think that hanging out with the perpetrator is great
No,
ever.
ever. No, I agree.
Okay. Okay. So
For
let's just
so many
clear the
different
air there.
reasons.
Yeah, we're
Yes.
clearing the air there. If you decide to go, then this would mean the perpetrator is not there, but we want you to still have inner strength when you go. If this is could be a triggering situation, maybe there's coping skills that could be flared up or just family tensions, whatever. What are some things that somebody could do to prepare themselves for entering?
Hmm. Um, I'm trying to think back a little bit to my days of when I went to the eating disorder facility. I graduated, I guess is the word, from there early November. So we were on the verge of holidays. And so there was a big talk surrounding how do you handle holidays? And honestly, the more you talk about the elephant in the room, the better it is. Not that you want to make people feel like that's the only thing you can talk about, but give it a place so that you're not suffering in silence while you're there, I guess. If let's say an eating disorder is on the list of things you struggle with, voicing that to those around you so you have a little bit of accountability, like, hey, dinner's going to be hard. Can you keep the conversation going real light and easy so that maybe I don't, get lost in my thoughts? Or there's this one particular person, maybe outside of the eating disorder, just trigger related. There's a particular person that I don't want to be left alone with. I don't want a deep conversation with this person. Can you help guide me with that? Explain what you need. That can show strength and give you a sense of like a plan going in.
Yeah. I think having a plan is key. And
Yeah.
if you do have a spouse or a sibling that you can kind of buddy up with, then they can either stay near you most of the time, or if you need some help, you could have a secret word or something that you do that's
Or
like,
bring a friend.
get me out of here.
Yes. Yes.
Time for a Pepsi. I don't know. Time for a brownie. Whatever it is, it's like they know that
Yes.
means like, all right, I need a breath of fresh air. I need alone time. I need to just get my thoughts together. And maybe even having your exit planned, because I
Mm-hmm.
think sometimes we think we have to stay for hours and hours and hours. Well, maybe we go and we have dinner and then we choose to leave, and that's okay. So as long as you're and your family and whoever you're going with are on the same page, then that could be an easy transition out.
Yep, have a plan in place for sure. And not only will that help you get out of situations, it'll ease your heart and your mind a little bit too going in.
Yes. Yeah. I often say practice,
Mm,
so if you've got, I mean, again, this all sounds silly when we're saying it right here, but if you're in the midst of emotion, we don't do these things. So if you're nervous or anxious, you could even just practice saying, and maybe you haven't seen people in a while or whatever, you could just practice in the mirror saying, hey, how are you? How is your week? What are you up to? Practice having these conversations, because when you go in, it'll seem a lot more natural.
yeah, that's true. I know another thing that people might run into is going back home is Maybe the perpetrator's not in the family, but just in the town, and you will have the fear of running into him or somebody related to him, and having an action plan for that as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Like what would be an action plan if you see somebody like that? Run away.
So many different thoughts are coming through my mind right
Kick him?
now.
I don't know.
Like my fists are clenching as I'm thinking of
Yeah,
it.
shoot.
I need to plan.
Okay, yep.
Yes.
But yeah, I think all of those things. I mean, maybe not kicking them. I don't know if that would work
No.
out well, but
But the whole point to all of this is not only be authentic with other people, be authentic with yourself.
yes.
Because if you are trying to tell yourself, oh, I'm fine, this is going to be fine, your inner child is saying, no, like this is not safe. And I'm about to come out and have these conversations for you because you're pretending like this is no big deal.
Right. Yep. Yep. Ask yourself, what do I need in this situation? And then ask for what you need, whether it's beforehand. I think that that's always best, preparing yourself and your family if you need to, going with a friend, not going to the local grocery store alone. All of those things can help empower you.
Yes.
And it may sound like, oh, I can't do it myself, but that's not, you're empowered when you know there's a plan.
For sure. And then honestly, I don't know your family situation, but let's say you do go in and you are the healthiest version of yourself that you've been in a while, and you handle holidays with vulnerability, with authenticity. It's going to impact the whole family in a positive way. Because if you've not been your real self, most likely they've not been their real self. And it can maybe have a domino effect. I mean, I can imagine maybe a sibling saying, hey, whatever you're doing, I want that.
Yeah. What I think is fascinating too is if you respond differently to something that used to make you mad or upset, everyone else goes, hmm?
Right.
And so they may push harder because they want to trigger you, because they want to like push your
What they're
buttons.
used to.
And then you're giving them something they're not used to. And so I think the coolest thing is knowing that inner strength and not waffling because of other people and their lack of communication or empathy.
Yep. And I also feel like knowing your limits.
Yeah.
When you start to feel, and this is where you have to be in tune with yourself, because there's times I can be in a situation and I am an adult Rachel through and through. And then I will slowly start to feel myself wearing out and that inner child creeping in, and anxiety and fear and weakness. And that needs to be my cue of, okay, time for me to slide out and recharge, whether it's for a time or for the day. But knowing your limits and recognizing when the red flags within you are saying, hey, you need a break.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Let's talk about grief in the
Okay.
holiday season.
Oh, yeah, shoot.
You
Especially
know,
this, yeah. With COVID not too long ago, I'm sure so many people have lost loved ones. Family just doesn't look the same. Is that what you mean?
yeah, I think that there's a lot of emotions that pop up in the
Yeah.
holiday season. It can be grief because it's, a grandparent isn't there anymore. It could be grieving, like I want a healthy Thanksgiving dinner and we always end up fighting. And, I mean, it could be grieving the fact that the relationships aren't what you wish they would be. And I think that labeling it as grief
Right.
and understanding that that's part of the grieving process is this sadness, this up and down, the anger.
So here's my question for you with that.
Uh-huh.
Do you hold on to hope that this year's going to be different? Or do you go into it with a different perspective?
How would I describe it? My thought process is I can only change myself.
Good point.
So I can't hope that my children are going to clean their room without being asked. Like, is that really reasonable? Probably not. I mean, not the same example, but so I think that I want to say eyes wide open, but that's like the name of your book. I want to go in with my heart wide open, meaning I can expect the best, but also have realistic expectations, because I don't think that I can always wish other people were better. If I spend my time wishing other people were better, we will be in this cycle stuck loop for a long, long time, because I
Oh,
don't
that's
have
painful.
any control of you.
Right.
Now, if you grow or have your own rock bottom, or if you, whatever the case may be, sweet. The only thing I can do is control myself.
That's right.
So I would say my role when going into these situations is take care of, as we say, take care of my 6 feet. And I'm going to let you take care of yours, which means I'm not going to own your stuff. So if you're a weirdo, I don't own that. If you're yelling or, whatever, I don't let it impact me, but I could choose not to stay.
Right.
So do I have hope that people can change? I'm in the change business. I always have hope that people can change, but I don't worry about them changing, and I don't live my life based on them changing.
And your happiness isn't based on
Yes.
them changing.
My happiness is not dictated about because of what other people do.
Granny said to me recently, we need to be able to learn from the past, but live in the today. Like live with the reality of where everything's at today and learn from the past.
Yeah. I just don't think it's smart to wish that other people would do, we can't wish it for them.
Well, sometimes it's like stepping in the middle of the street, hoping a car won't hit you in the
Exactly.
middle, like there's reality too.
Yeah. 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 And so you can hold space for change, but you're not going to rely on it for your own peace.
Easier said than done, but it is, I mean, it's a journey that we all probably have to go on with somebody or something, realizing that this isn't the way we had hoped it would turn out.
Yep.
Living with the reality of today and learning from the past.
In our last podcast, we talked about the stronger we are in healing, the more that we're not on this roller coaster, because I think maybe, I don't know, is a family gathering a good place to practice those skills?
It depends.
Let's play a game.
Icebreaker.
Yeah. But I do think that this is a real conversation that a lot of people are starting to have with themselves. How am I going to handle these holidays if I choose to go? And how am I going to handle these holidays if I choose to not go and still have great memories with my own family, or, finding another family to be a part of, another community? I mean, people have Friendsgiving all the time. So being intentional about creating that for yourself, because you deserve it. You deserve, even if your family is not a place where you choose to be, you absolutely deserve to have a community of people who love and support you, whether they're blood related or not.
Yeah. And then I'll throw another challenge out there for the survivors. Maybe that means you need to go out and meet some other people who don't have anybody during the holiday season, and you need to create the Thanksgiving meal or the Christmas get together, because giving back in that way fuels your soul as well, and it gives you something to look forward to and have purpose with.
Yeah, we have some Stop SIS girls getting together for the holidays, and it's beautiful to see, because again, they now have found a new community where they can be authentic. They can have fun, they can be real, they don't have to walk on eggshells, they don't have to pretend, and they feel comfortable and safe with each other. So they're going to include all their families and do it together.
Yeah. And I think that's what Jesus would do, right?
Yeah.
Let's have a powwow together where we can all be real and belong.
Yeah. I think I love our talks. I mean, really, that's why we started this, is because I feel like whenever we talk, there's aha moments and it gets us thinking.
Yeah,
And
we were talking earlier and you're like, okay, we just need to push record.
yeah.
It's just, yeah, we have good conversations. I enjoy it so much.
Me too. Me too. And I know we don't always end with like here's a 3-step process for.
Right.
It's not always like here's the thing to make it's what we're doing is we're asking powerful questions and we're giving ideas and solutions for people to come up with their own answer for what that will mean for them.
Here's what just came to my mind. Oftentimes, it feels like with holidays, things are outside of our control. So we need to give the control back to yourself where it belongs. And that is using your voice beforehand, deciding, maybe even saying, if you can promise me these 3 things, I'll be there. If you can't, that's totally okay. No big deal. I'm just not going to make it this year. Creating your own Friendsgiving and providing for, maybe even volunteering at a shelter or something. There are so many ways that you can make this holiday season magical. And that is within your control. What we want to do sometimes is sit in a corner and feel sorry for ourselves that we don't have what we wish we had. And not to say that you can't feel those feelings at times, be real with yourself, but don't stay there because you got places to go. You got things to do. And I don't know, maybe that'll give you a little jump towards the holiday season with cheer.
Yeah, well, now if you're the one cooking the turkey, you got to Google that crap. How do I make
Right?
how
For
do I make
sure.
a turkey on my own? But you're
No.
exactly right. I think that's the cool thing to think about is control the controllables. What can I control? And then choose to control those things rather than saying,
Mhm.
um, it's it's out of my hands.
Yeah. One thing you've taught me is nobody can make you feel a certain way.
Yeah.
And so, like my youngest daughter, who's 5, she'll often say, "You made me angry." And I'll say, "I can't make you angry. You choose what emotion you want to take from what has happened." And that's kind of what we're doing with these holiday seasons or any tricky situation. You get to choose how it's going to sink in and manifest in your own life.
Mm. I am excited to hear how people prepare this season
Yeah.
and how they have a successful event. That's one of the exercises we do in 90-day U-turn, and some of our things is we say, all right, what do we want to happen?
Hmm.
What do we want a successful Christmas or Thanksgiving or whatever the case may be to be? And then we write it down in detail. And it might not go perfectly, but we are triggering our reticular activating system to find it. And
Hmm.
so if we spend time worrying about what we don't want, then that will often create that situation. So we want to
Yes.
build the muscle of creating what we do want. So what do I want this situation to be like? How do I want this to go? Write it all down. And I'm sure there will probably be some things in there about other people, but try to make it as much about how you feel and how you respond as possible. I feel I feel peace. I feel joy. I'm laughing with my family. We're telling jokes, we're playing games, and I feel like I belong. Um,
Yes.
whatever the case may be, I think that could be a cool exercise. And then we want to hear about it. We want to know
Yes.
how you showed up differently and how everything else shifted into place because of it.
Absolutely. I have a really quick story to go with that.
Okay.
So a friend of mine, she hates flying, like absolutely detests it. In fact, the last time she had flown, they ended up giving her a voucher to fly again because it went so bad and she had complained and everything. But she didn't even want to use the voucher. She hates flying that much. And anyway, so she's about to fly and she calls me and I tell her about the reticular activating system. Did I say it right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And she's like, "Rachel, I don't believe in just willing things to happen." I said, "Well, I don't either. This is different." I said, "You are going to change what you see while you're in the airport." And she was like, "Okay." So we kind of went through some of the steps. And then when she got home, I didn't hear anything from her. And I eventually called her and I was like, "Tell me about it. Tell me how it went." And she said, well, you'll never believe it, but on the way home, we met a man who needed a ride. He had been home, like all these awful things that he had been through. She met him in the airport, became friends with him, helped him, and he had made comments about how he knew she was a Christian and felt the love of Jesus through her, all these things. And I said, well, was the flight okay? And she was like, oh, well, the flight was delayed 2 hours and we had a terrible landing, but that doesn't matter. Her focus was on something different. Now, had she been completely glued to the thought of our plane is late, the turbulence is awful, she would have missed the opportunity of meeting that guy. But her reticular activating system had been switched and her whole flight experience was changed, even though it was the same.
Mic drop.
Yeah. I was
Wow. It always works. I love these stories. It's so fun. Oh, all right. Well, we want to hear from you. So post in the comments if you're on YouTube. We want to hear what you're doing to prepare for holidays or what you've done in the past, or if you have any other ideas or questions for us. We would love to hear what you are interested in learning more about as we create our list of podcast topics. If you are listening on the podcast, then certainly go to the Facebook page or the Instagram page and like, comment, and leave us feedback. We'd love to hear from you and are eager to learn from you too. So anything else you want to add before we say goodbye?
Belonging can't really exist unless we are true to ourselves.
All right. I've got a good one for today. I'm going to end with an I declare. I declare that I am calm and peaceful. I do not let people or circumstances upset me. I rise above every difficulty, knowing that God has given me the power to remain calm. I choose to live my life happy, bloom where I'm planted, and let God fight my battles. This is my declaration, and this is my declaration for you. Have an awesome day, my friends, and we'll see you next week. Thank you so much for listening to this powerful episode of Stop Suffering in Silence. If you are interested in booking Rachel to speak at your school, your church, or on your podcast, then please email openblindeyes@protonmail.com. If you are interested in sponsoring a survivor on their healing journey and would like to donate to Stop SIS, then please check out the link in the description box or show notes below, or you can email stopsis@protonmail.com. And finally, if you are currently suffering in silence, or you know somebody who is, whether they're dealing with a current trauma or one from the past, then we will always recommend that you reach out to your local resources and find a counselor that you can trust, because nobody is meant to suffer alone. Have an amazing week, and thank you for being here.